Jacob T. Davis here. I've got my man Adam Jones on today's podcast. Adam Jones, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a Pullman local.
Yeah. So I am a Pullman local, but in some different ways. My grandparents came here in the 40s, built a house in the 50s. My dad grew up here. He was a Pullman Greyhound. There's some travel stuff. I actually grew up partially on the west side of the state, but then also grew up a lot here in Pullman. So I've been able to be all over the place, but when it comes to remembering what downtown Pullman looks like, the old combine, and just all kinds of other elements, there's a lot of deep knowledge here. A lot of good history. I remember all the different owners of Cafe Moro, the different things the Thomas Hammer used to be over the years. Like, it used to be a cyber cafe, if you remember. I don't know if you were in town for that.
Back when I don't remember that. No, I don't. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I had to think about it. Well, so I was just looking at your video and it says you're a marketing technologist. What does that mean?
Yeah. So a marketing technologist. I'm also the owner of Pullman Marketing, advertising agency that helps take care of people all across the nation. But where we're uniquely gifted at is being able to pull the IT side into the marketing. So much of digital marketing has to have a technical understanding of how are things being routed? Is this setting up with the database correctly? Are the automations working? And so that's where a marketing technologist is really able to make things on both sides work. Is the messaging working? Awesome. Does the data actually support it? Awesome. And making that work for our customers.
Yeah, you've been helping me for a lot of years. We've kind of been working together. I helped you buy a home back in, we were just talking about back in 2011, back in the day. Yep. I think you were one of my first Zillow leads, and I'm pretty sure you're like maybe my first or second or somewhere. You're one of my first clients. So we've kind of known each other for a while. So you do, like, you guys are awesome. You help me with video. You do Google advertising, social media stuff. What else do you guys do?
So that hits a lot of it. That gets down to the tactical side, right? Of we build the website, we do the social media, we make the video content that helps get out to people, but then also doing the pay-per-click advertising so that we're able to generate that traffic and get that return on investment. But then we also really do assist with the strategy portion of it. Of, is this the right audience? Is this the right messaging? How do we develop the brand and the visual identity for things to progress and move forward? So we work with clients at the really high level of almost business consulting at the end of the day. Like, how do we operate as a business and marketing and messaging? But then we get down to the real technical, tactical items and that implementation. So we do our best to be pretty full service. We do some print. We're not huge into print just because, well, print is things break, things die, it litters, stuff happens. Getting stuff from the printing people is sometimes really tough. I've never met a printing office that has the same templates or the same scaling.
Did you know I actually was a pressman back in high school? I worked for Cougar Graphics. I ran I ran a press back in the day. So I did that for a couple of years.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
Well, cool. So the reason, and the other thing that I think is awesome is you employ for the most part, all local people in Pullman, right?
Yes, all local. I do have a programmer in Brazil that I do like to use, but he is a WSU person, international student, came up, met him, worked with him. So pretty much everyone I work with has that connection in Pullman, if not living here for extended periods of time.
Awesome. And so now you're kind of, you're growing, and I'm helping you try to buy a building. And
Yeah.
That's been, an interesting experience, I'm sure, for yourself. And you probably know more about SBA loans than probably anybody at this point. So what can you share about your experience going the SBA route for buying a commercial property?
Yeah. So, and I'll take a step back just briefly though, because like I've bought and sold with you, I think 4 or 5 times now. I'm trying to get that punch card. And for the most part, they've been pretty smooth. Like there's always, a couple hiccups. Like there's always a hiccup or, oh, hey, we need to redo the electrical box, right? Okay, it's a Federal Electric. Cool, we get it. That's normal. That's normal house purchasing. I have did a lot of research going into the commercial purchase, but I don't. I think it's something you kind of have to experience for yourself. All the weird nuances of like, oh crap, I really do have to think through plowing. Wow, I really do need to think through the different insurances. What are there groups that don't insure things? Are there people that are faster or better at this? What about parking? How do I do parking? What and there really is just a lot more to think about than a house purchase going into the commercial realm. And so going the SBA route, it's a lot more paperwork. A lot more paperwork because you're first off you have to do the personal financial statements, but then you have to do the business financial statements, and then if you don't already, and I guess this is best practice, I didn't know it. You also are to create a separate holdings account, which I've helped people do business licenses. I've worked with freelancers. Making a business license, easy. Trying to find the correct NAIC code for a real estate holdings company that also is not property management, but also is not this or that. That actually took a while. And so then the experience so far has been, I'd say, fairly smooth, but there is just a lot more to the process. And Jacob, I didn't know if there was a certain part of the process you wanted me to talk about most, or if you want me to just walk through it. Because
So let's start with why go SBA route first. So I mean, when you're
Mhm.
buying a commercial property, you could, you've got SBA, you've got commercial, cash, hard money. Um, so why did you choose to go SBA route?
So the nice thing with SBA is that it allows you to do a 10% down instead of a standard 20 or 25%. Now, granted, you may be able to get better deals or better rates if you go up to, say, 30, 35% down on a purchase. But also, that's a lot of cash, right? Like, regardless of whether it's 10%, 20%, 30%, the moment you're putting that much money down as a business, that can be a lot of your cash reserves. That can be some rainy day funds. That can be for additional investments or even just tax savings, right? Like there's a lot of reasons to keep a fair amount of cash on hand as you're operating your business. So I had looked at the SBA route and started in on it just because, hey, a 10% down, that keeps me pretty flush on other elements, just so that, hey, we've seen 2020, we've seen 2024. Maybe I do want to keep a little bit more cash on hand.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right now it just feels like you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we're in an election year. So, you don't know who's going to get elected. You don't know what the direction the country will go depending on who gets elected. So it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to make decisions. And so I'm sure, having as much cash on hand when you're in business is a good thing. So, um, so you decided to go to SBA, for the 10% down. Otherwise, you're 25% down, right? Typically
Mm-hmm.
20 or
Yeah.
25% to
Yeah.
go commercial route. Um, and you're working with Washington Trust Bank,
Yes.
right, on
Yeah.
the loan. And so typically with SBA, it takes longer once you agree to get, because you're working with the government, and
Yep.
they're slow. They're slow at everything. So, um,
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah. So
so
they were
I guess
saying, oh,
talk about that kind of your experience, like.
yeah. Yeah, because and once again, to me, this is kind of like a good comparison with normal real estate, right? Because most of my real estate deals have been, gosh, 30 days ish.
Hmm.
Maybe 25 on one of the instances, right? Like when you, even if it's a contingency sale on a residential, great, okay, the market has always been really hot. You put a contingency offer in on a house, you start your loan processing if you're not pre-approved, and then you list your house for sale, you get it up, you sell it, hey, 25, 35 days, and you can usually swing it. With SBA, your easy estimate is a minimum 45 days, if not closer to 60, possibly 70, 80 days for that loan origination process. And part of that is just being able to do all the paperwork that the SBA asks of you upfront, which it is 3 to 5 times more than what a residential purchase would be. But then they have additional items. So for one of the properties we were looking at, they were wanting to see, okay, you have some industrial zones nearby. Was there any dumping? And trying to do additional environmental protection? And that was a part of the SBA process. Um, with that, they are doing their best as the government to ensure their purchase, right? Like it's a loan, so they want to make sure that the asset is good. So there were more environmental issue items that they wanted to come up with. There was more history items. There were some issues with the county that they were wanting to say, like, oh, is this exactly right what the county has on record? Well, there were renovations since the county records.
Yeah, like oil tanks. You got to be, make sure there's no oil tanks when you're buying a property, because that has to be removed for SBA to move to do a SBA loan. You can't have exterior oil tanks.
Exactly. And so that's part of the EPA, that's part of the liability, that's part of the insurance, it's part of a lot of different assets that they're looking at that as a residential purchase or even just a general commercial, you might not be fully thinking about. Um, the other side of it too is that they're actually really busy right now. What I've heard over the last 2 to 3 months as I've been working through the process is that they are absolutely slammed, and that has been taking up way more time for those loan originations to occur and for them to actually even communicate and respond back to the bank through the liaisons. And so that's the other thing to keep in mind. It's like with a bank or with a mortgage broker, either one, you're kind of able to do a one-to-one deal, or at least when we were doing the payroll protection program, right, the PPP, banks were just inundated with paperwork, but they could have all the other branches really work into the process and supplement that manpower, where the SBA is not going to quick hire a bunch of people to work through a busy time. It's the government. They're just going to do what they're going to do for that extended period of time and delay it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you just got to kind of plan it out, and so when you're making the offer, we've got to have get seller on board for a 45 days, 2 month close typically. So I think, and then, I think you got to make sure on SBA that you have a decent feasibility period to kind of work through any of the potential issues. And then, Washington Trust, I think, has been pretty great on the
Yeah.
SBA side. They can only do what they can do because they're working with the government. So I think they've done a really good job. And so, any I guess when it comes to SBA, any other thoughts on that? Recommendations on that?
Yeah. I think with anything with it, just keep in mind that while you are getting a 10% down payment, which is awesome, right? Like it's almost like in an FHA, 1.5% down. Those are awesome. It's kind of like that, but there is a penalty to that in terms of a higher interest rate.
I was just going to say, what's your interest rate going to be?
Uh,
If you want to
so
share.
we're going back and forth, but the first interest rate that was floated was 11.25%,
Yeah.
which it's tough when I'm like, oh my gosh, but I just heard the feds cut all the rates. I thought this was going to be a lot lower. But part of it is that penalty of the SBA guaranteeing the loan. So there is an additional higher interest rate that does get associated with that.
Right. And then refi, you've got prepayment penalties, right? Or something like that where you
Yeah.
can't refi it.
So I just got clarification on that actually this week, is that if it's longer than 15 years, so like if you do 14 and a half, you're safe. But if it's more than 15 years, there can be a 5% prepayment penalty, which, I mean, depending on the real estate you're looking at, that's anywhere from a $10,000 to $50,000, $80,000 penalty within the first few years if you try and refi it up front, or maybe, hey, this wasn't the right building, you need to flip it and sell it. You're going to be hit on that transaction.
Right. And your loan term is only for 20 years, right? You can't amortize SBA 30 years. So that's another big
Correct.
deal to
Correct.
consider because your payment's higher.
Correct.
So 20 years, higher interest rate, but lower down payment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But, ultimately, then you own your building, you own your space, and you're not, getting kicked out of a space you're renting. So you're building equity.
Yeah.
And because it's
Yeah.
a 20-year loan, you're really kind of building equity faster than, most people have a 30-year loan. So they're making interest payments on most of
Mm-hmm.
their loan for the first, portion of their loan. Um, well,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And to also kind of, even that statement out too, right? Like when you're looking at renting places in Pullman specifically, we saw places anywhere from 2,500 to 5,500 a month for a lease. Most of it triple N, most of it you're having to pay for additional items. And so when you're looking at, okay, well, shoot, even if it's 11% interest and my payments are going to be anywhere between 2,500 and 5,500, you might as well be building the equity with that 10% down with an 11% interest, just in that you're not allowing that money to go to waste through that leasing agreement.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, commercial real estate is fairly limited, it seems like, for what your usage is, kind of nice office space is what you need. And there's not a ton of options for that. There are options to rent, but it's pretty expensive. And
Yep.
so if you can own it and kind of control that, then that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we had looked at, as an example, there was a kind of retail office space that was available off of Bishop, um, and it was about 5,000 a month minimum start, depending on shared plowing expenses, up to 5,700 in the winter.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say then you have like cams, that you got to pay. So you have your rent, and then your cams, and it's like, yeah, it's commercial real estate. Office space can get super expensive, and and on top of that, it's so like, you've got people that don't want to work in an office anymore, right? They want to work from home. Everyone wants to work from home, and so then you're like, trying to think through that. Do I really
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
buy commercial real estate? I think, ultimately it's great exposure. It looks super professional when, your client comes into your office and they're like, oh, wow, you have an actual
Hmm.
office. So I think it's worth owning a space,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
for the advertising, I think is a big reason to have your own office, like for business. But
Super.
it's just super expensive, and you've got to have a good agent, like this guy, to
The
help
best
you
agent.
uh, find it. And I do a lot of residential, but I do also do commercial. So um, well, cool. Any other
Yeah.
thoughts? I know, like usually on my podcast, I talk about Cougar sports because I love Cougar sports. So
I mean, the
any
Hawaii game was great.
yeah, Hawaii. My wife's from Hawaii. We tried to do a luau tailgate
Oh, you really?
for the first time. My wife made some Kahlua pig, and we had some folks over.
Did you do the house divided like face paints with like part green, part red?
Well, she's an alum, so WSU alum, but
Oh,
she's
sure.
from Hawaii, so uh, yeah, we didn't quite do that, but so she was cheering for the Cougs, I think, for the most
Gotcha.
part. But yeah, pretty exciting. Cougs are ranked. I saw in one poll they're ranked in the top 25, so I think that's amazing considering all the things that have happened in the last year.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean, it just
absolutely.
it just feels like, man, Cougs are overperforming, or is that the right term?
A little bit because that. Oh gosh, who did they play? What was the group we lost to badly?
Boise
Sadly,
State.
yeah. Which okay, I mean, granted, State is known as a good team. Like that's
They're tough, but I mean, they have probably one of the best running backs I've ever seen in college football. So, I mean, you got to give us a little bit of. I mean, that if that guy doesn't get hurt, he will
yeah,
make. I mean, he's going to
yeah.
make a ton of money no matter what. But uh, so
Yeah.
otherwise, I mean, I think Cougs are going to go undefeated for the rest of the season, and
I think so. I think so. Which that being said, I don't know that all of them are going to be slam dunks like we had with Portland and the others, right? Like I don't know that they're going to be that hard, but like San Diego, Utah, New Mexico, I mean they're okay. They're doing okay. It's
Oregon State's probably going to be our toughest game left, I
yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
But if we go
And we
undefeated,
and we only need I think two more schools to be Pac-8, which is what we need for the conference.
mm-hmm.
Which as we do these more games, I do think it's very easy for us to keep our conference, keep the Pac-8. I don't know what stuff looks like for basketball. That's where my knowledge goes a little bit weak. But you watch a lot more of the basketball too during the springtime, don't you?
I got season tickets, so yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, the other thing that I haven't talked to you much about Cougar Collective or Cougs
Oh,
First, but
yeah. Yeah.
I think that's something you should get involved in. I'm actually going up to Spokane tomorrow for the Cougs First show in Spokane. So,
Yeah, I am too. Do you want a carpool?
oh, you are going?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You've got a booth?
No, I don't have a booth. I was just gonna go to the thing.
Oh, well, I got to go up early. I'm going to be there at 12 for the lunch thing. So,
Oh, okay. I
but
might. I'm probably gonna go. Okay. I reached out to Steve Heston, who's one of the cool mortgage people in the area. So I might carpool with him then too. I don't know. We have been involved with Cougs First. I love Tony Poston and the organization, the way that he's been developing it out. Just because Alumni Foundation is cool and all, I just don't like getting hit up for money all the time.
right.
Uh,
Well,
so,
and yeah, I mean, anything business related is always fun. So,
oh yeah.
um,
That being said, are you doing a lot of Cougar Collective NIL stuff?
I am tiptoeing into. So I'm a Cougs First Palouse Posse member.
Okay.
And I went to a function up in Spokane last week on it. So I am wanting to do more advertising with Cougar, athletes and coaches and that kind of thing. So we should
Okay.
collaborate a little more on that.
Absolutely. Wait, what's a posse member? Like, is that a different membership tier?
Police Posse is like, I think one of you just pay more money to be part of the Police Posse. So, yes, you do pay. Yeah, you just pay more money.
Okay. And what do you get from it?
You're just supporting, you're supporting the NIL, so the Cougar Collective. So
Okay.
you're giving them money, and then they can then, that allows them to have, kind of a foundation of funds coming in so they can, keep coaches around, keep players around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'd like to kind of do a deep dive into, all the things that they do. Um, but I think the main thing is they're, trying to help uh, pay athletes so that they, come to WSU and then stick around.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think there's a whole experience end of that too, where yeah, it's not only just getting paid, but then how easy is it to work with the business owners, right? Like, cool, we might be as a student athlete, like I feel like they have to almost run their own business now, right? With their image and likeness, and like, okay, well, what kind of business owners do I want to work with? Are these cool people to work with, or are they all kind of just jerks about stuff? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's where Cougar Collective and the others really actually do create a positive culture, making that connection point that I don't know. I would be nervous if I was like at a California school and like having to work with California business owners who tend to be a little bit more gruff or needy about stuff. Like, oh,
I think there's a huge opportunity for business owners to get involved in that. I would imagine these players, they've got agents, I guess. I think they've got agents, and it's
kind
like,
of. Some do, some don't. It's kind of wonky on that.
I've always been like, man, I should just be an NIL agent. That'd be kind of fun, but
That would
um,
be. That would be.
um, but yeah. So I think we should try to get some more players involved. So on my walkthrough videos that I do, I've been talking about for a while. I need to get one of our players to, like, be a part of it and do something cool. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
All right. So
You gotta find a house with a really good basketball court.
I need so I'm doing a video this Friday with Peter, your video guy, and trying to think of a good athlete we could get to be on it. So that's my goal for this week. I'm going to try to get an athlete to be on that video.
Okay, but are you wanting like a football player, or are you okay with like a volleyball or like a golfer or baseball?
Dude, I'll take anybody. I'll take Rowan. Uh, I'll take curling. Do we have a curling team?
We should. That's good
No,
enough.
I think just having an athlete on it would be cool. So, I do have a friend that said I should reach out to. There's a volleyball gal that
Hmm. Hmm.
he he's a principal on the west side, Kyle Axelson. But he said he's got a gal that I should contact to see if I think she's on the Coug volleyball team.
Okay.
Volleyball or soccer? I have to double check that, but I should call her. So maybe we can get one of these athletes on the next video. That'd be sweet.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you gotta
So
save the rowing team for when there's a good pool. Just put a kayak in the pool.
that'd be cool. I emailed the athletic director a
Oh
month
yeah.
or two ago to see if she'd be on a video, but I haven't heard back yet. So I'll keep asking.
You should reach out again. I got to listen to her present at a Pullman Kiwanis meeting. Um, Absolutely delightful, very knowledgeable. I actually really feel very positive about the athletic director and the direction and the vision. I'm actually very encouraged about the current circumstances.
I mean, yeah, I don't think anybody can complain with the way things went with the conference. I went to a Cougar Collective meeting last week and they talked about that, how, like, basically all these other schools just left, they just bailed on us. I mean, they kind of left us for dead.
Yep.
And, then the president, I think he had the idea, well, let's sue them. I think, it worked out. I think he had a right to sue him. Like, they
Yeah,
just kind
absolutely.
of totally screwed us, So,
Well, and they're paying for it in some really different ways too, because I know that especially UW has been really struggling with the travel schedule.
I took screenshots of all the records, of the Big 12 and the Big 10
Yeah.
yesterday. I was just curious, and yeah, everybody but Oregon is getting they're getting crushed, and it's
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, USC and UCLA are the bottom of the barrel in the Big 10. It's like, try to tell you, like, uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. No, it's tough. It's tough. Well, especially like even trying to think academically, right? Like, these are they're athletes, they're football players, they're really trying to play and practice and give their all, but then they are still students, right? Like you're still trying to pass organic chemistry, you're still trying to pass your 400 level classes, which isn't always the easiest. But then you have all day travel, you go and you get beat up by these guys who are, a lot of times they're just bigger. Like they're just, the other teams, they're just big guys on the other side of the line, and so they're getting physically exhausted out of, and then trying to get past an exam on Monday and Tuesday. Like that's rough. That's really rough. And I think it's actually a disservice to the students at the end of the day.
yeah, a lot of these guys. I mean, I grew up in SEC country, so these guys are have faced a lot more competition growing up than a lot of the players on the West Coast. Is my opinion. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a ton of competition down south. So, and on the East Coast, and I just think, they've grown up playing a lot more tough competition. So now these Pac-12 schools are facing that, and not only that, tougher competition, but you've got really loud stadiums,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
people are crazy,
Massive.
um, and so it's a new experience. But I think it's probably good for these schools too, because they're like, oh, okay, this is how the rest of the country plays football. So
Yeah, yeah, that's true too. And in the long run, that actually might provide more opportunities for professional drafts and stuff too. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays.
yeah,
See how it plays.
so it'll be interesting. I'm watching. So well, cool. So anything else? I think we covered quite a bit. It was interesting to hear your perspective on SBA. So hopefully we get a Dylan contract today.
Absolutely. I think so. I hope so. That's why we sign paperwork, right? That's
Yeah, we should be in contract. So awesome. Well, Adam Jones, Pullman Marketing, local Pullman marketing technologist. Thanks for joining on my podcast, and I'm sure we'll be chatting soon. Have a good
all right.
day.
See you.
Go Cougs.